Okay, 1-3. Linear function slope applications. If you see the word applications, it means word problems. We are going back to something you should recall from Algebra 1, slope-intercept form. We're going to talk about, first of all, finding the slope based on 2 points on the line, word problems with average rate of change. That is simply what slope stands for. It's the average rate of change. So if you see find the average rate of change, it means find the slope. We're going to look at graphing lines, using the graph to answer questions, and word problems. Oh, and there's the answer. All right. Number 1, let's dive right into an example from Algebra 1. You should know this, but if you've slept since then, that's why I'm here. Graph the function f of x equals negative 2/3 x plus 1. Please understand how to read this. The f of x part is the fancy, what letter? It's the fancy y, right? This is a fancy y, and then this is the meat of the equation. This is where you actually get your information from. It says, and determine its slope. Well, what is that formula from Algebra 1? Very good. Slope-intercept form is the name of it, and it is y equals mx plus b. M stands for the slope. B stands for the y-intercept, and it is a point on the graph, right? It is always a point at 0 and then whatever b is. Because if it's a y-intercept, it's sitting on the y-axis, which means x is 0 every time. So the directions say to graph it. This is that trademark phrase that I told you I need to get rich off of. Begin with B, move with M, which means you're going to plot B on the graph, and then from there you're going to move in the direction that the slope tells you. What is B in this equation? B is 1, which translates to what point? 0, I heard it. Is it you, Luke? Or Lucas? Luke. Is that you, Connor? B is 1, which translates to a point. So right there, looking at the equation, you already have 1 point on the graph. What's the slope? Okay. Look how the negative is written in the function. It's negative 2/3, right? All right. Here's where I need you to be intuitive enough to understand. Is the slope positive or negative? It's negative, and it's 2/3, right? So if I wrote it like this, is that the same slope? No. Yes. Yes.
Why is it why?
Why would I want to write it like that? Go back to slope and think of what that phrase was. Remember what slope told you? Rise over run. Okay. If the negative is hovering out here in front of the fraction, you don't know what direction to go. It looks like you're going, red means wrong. It looks like you're going to go up to right 3, but then you got the negative there, and that would be wrong. Okay? Well, if you go down to left 3, you just made them both negative, and that's wrong. So you're going to see me when I write these, like when I have a problem on the board and I'm telling y'all, here's how we're going to do it. If the problem starts like that, with the negative in front of the fraction, you're going to see me write it with the top number. I don't know why. I can't stand it, to be the bottom of the fraction bottom. So you're going to see the way I write it is my negative will go to the top number, which means instead of rising, I'm going to fall. Thank you. Instead of rising, I'm going to fall, and then I'm going to run right through.
Is that how our math club will do it too?
Yeah. Well, that's how, when you go to graph it, that's how you need to do it to be able to graph it correctly. In MATLAB, they're probably going to write the negative in front of the entire fraction, just the way it is presented there. You get to pick which number you want to make negative. As long as only one of them is negative, it's still the same thing. The way I always do it, because I try to stay consistent, is it goes to my top number every time. So from B, I will fall to and then run right through. So let's plot it. B is 0, 1. From here, I'm going to fall 2 and run right 3. And then I'm going to draw my line. So you might want to make a note right here, note the negative. And then think back to what we're talking about here. Because if the slope is negative, that means one of the numbers in the fraction is negative. Don't make both of them negative, because then now you just turned it into a positive.
And the top one's always good.
The way I'm consistent, the way I do it, I make the top one negative. What? Oh, yeah. I shouldn't give it to you, though. Well, I'm like the Girl Scout. I got a no. Gracie! You're lucky I like you.
She's going to Jace.
Miss you don't like red, do you?
No, I did. You're going to be able to hear you.
It's what?
The plastic ones are better. Yeah, the plastic ones are
Oh, okay. I
don't want
okay. I'm passing.
Oh.
Did you need one too?
No, you can't.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
We get to make this fun noise. All right, look here. There you go. Oh. All right, I'm done. I'm sorry. Here. There we go. Give me that one. Pass one back to Audrey. Need one? Anyone else need a ruler? All right, y'all. We're tossing them up. Ready? Are y'all ready? No, I would never do that. I would do that. You would be like,
Hey, Miss Holcombe, is your microphone over there? Oh my God.
When y'all statute of limitations?
I can't.
You really got it.
Jason.
It's like start walking in circles, not gonna lie down.
Jason, you're listening. I like you.
It's from that one time. Read the slope from a graph is when it can be negative. In that case, it's just a negative slope. It's not the bottom.
I read the last chapter.
I'll show you.
Last night.
All right, let me show you on this same question. Notice at the bottom it says right here, what if I give you the graph and I ask you to tell me the slope? So instead of I give you the equation and you graph it and you state the slope, what if I just gave you the graph and I said, tell me the slope? Let me change, hold on, let me modify this real quick. Okay, so I'm answering this question right now. If I gave you a graph and I said, what's the slope from the graph? The first thing you need to do is ask yourself, well, is it positive or negative, so that you don't answer the wrong part to that, because that should be obvious. If it's negative, you can make a capital N out of it every time. If it's negative, you can make the line be the middle part of a capital N every single time for negative slope. Okay, so this is clearly negative. You have to look at the graph and find two places where the line crosses the grid in the background nicely. Red means wrong. I would not want to pick this point and this point because I cannot read them. If you can see my grid in the background, those are just hovering, right? You want to pick points that you can actually read. So, and I already know these are here, but I'm going to pick that one. That should be, it was when I drew the line, I'm a little off. Okay, so after you pick 2 points, now you're going to just count. So you would count the slope using the phrase rise over run. Now here's the problem.
Teachers and students, please warn the interruption.
There's a sniper up there. Count. You're going to count the.
I'm in the line of fire.
You're going to count the slope using rise over run. Let me tell you something I taught my geometry and algebra 1 students, and you might want to write this. Okay. Start from lowest point. If you will start from the lowest point, the direction you are forced to go first is rise, up. And then the run part, you have to look at the graph. And this is where, Madeline, the run can end up being a negative, which just lets you know that the slope is a negative. Because your rise will always be positive if you're starting from the lowest point. So you would start down here. I'm going to rise 1, 2. Then I'm going to run left 3, which is why it's negative, because I'm going left. And so my slope would be 2 over negative 3, which I think my math lab will accept if it was to ask that. It doesn't matter where you put the negative in my math lab. You can put it in front of the fraction or with just one top or bottom. I have no clue, but I did check the exterior doors to make sure that they were not top open.
Okay. Wait, do you know what's going on? Have they told you?
No, that's what I'm talking about.
I wish. I'm kind of excited to have
I'm such a
It
good
gave us some light. You know, it gave us some rush.
I'm so lost.
Yeah, for real. Like, am I solid? I'm like, oh, I got
I was laughing. I was like, oh my god, I can't do it.
I definitely like
No, like you're in the course. Flowers are like
Wait a minute, I
No, yeah.
it doesn't have a six watch, right?
Oh yeah, she doesn't because the door's blocked with her freaking window. So
Oh,
we're dead.
cabinet.
Can we just close the door? Yeah,
He's just saying there's like 2 there's like 2
Oh.
Pause
Teachers and
recording.
students, please warn the interruption again. If you have Coach Walker or you have PE block. In the weight room, you will need to go to the auxiliary gym.
It's just saying they can't
You
go out.
need to go to the auxiliary gym, there's a second block, Coach Walker, and Coach Jim will meet you there. Thank you.
It sounds pretty stressful. Yeah.
This is literally happened like last semester.
This Holcombe, why does it sound scary?
I don't think he's so scared. I think he's just trying to clear up before those kids
Go outside.
go outside.
We still got 45 more minutes.
I know. Yeah,
Will you tell us what's going on?
I will. I honestly, I don't know right now.
They're here.
I've just messaged Ring there too. Usually you're in the know.
Oh, literally copy and paste.
I know. My mom, she reminds me of a hairstylist that,
Did we get the
you know what I mean? Like, today, and that's Rebecca at the window. She's really good. She's like really, really sweet. My mom. Oh, yeah. Oh, like, okay, you know her. She's sweet. She's not. We're checking out. They do have a rough job up there. Yeah.
Y'all can be real. Ask her now.
She has a
Check out. Jace, if you watch this video and tell me the color purple, I'll give you extra credit.
Okay.
Oh, good.
There you go.
Can I get extra credit?
Yeah, that's it.
Fair post.
Y'all,
Fair post.
oh, progress reports. Does anyone have them?
How much extra credit is that?
Fair post.
Well, if I was handing out money, would you say yeah, but how much?
Maybe.
I definitely would. I mean, I want.
I mean,
$1.
I would still take it.
Dollars got up.
I would still take it, but I would definitely ask.
Wait,
Actually,
no.
I would take it and then.
I think it would motivate us to bring it sooner.
It's always passed out. You see all the way in chemistry. Chemistry's out.
Okay.
Or not chemistry.
I mean, what are we doing?
This needs to be right here, and then it'll look like a handlebar mustache. It will look funny. All right. Oh. Oh yeah, because I said purple. Never mind. I'm losing it. Okay. Horizontal and vertical lines. The top. So anytime you have these little boxes, this is where I've copied straight from the text the most important information about said content. I'm going to teach you an acronym to help you with horizontal and vertical lines. You have to say the acronym very carefully.
That's why we're on the lockdown.
Well, aren't we safe in the building?
I was about to say, I mean, no one's running this over.
Yeah. Well,
From that window.
It's happened before.
I was going to say, yeah, there's strange things that
How
happen.
did it find that signal?
Yeah.
Rip Javon's car.
So close together.
Let me move this over because I don't want it to get crowded. All right. This is an acronym. I want you to write it down. It's a little crowded, so you might want to wait till I write it all, or unless you can find some more room somewhere on your paper. I want you to write. Oh, wait. I should write it right here. No, that's fast acronym. Okay. We're going to write right here. Hoi. Hoi. Leave some space under it, and then be careful. Vux. I'm going to explain it. It is an acronym. Sounds like a really weird name. Hoi, Vux, and it helps tremendously with horizontal and vertical lines. You probably can see where this is going. It stands for, I'll write it straight down. Horizontal lines have a zero slope, and the equation of the line is always y equals the y-intercept every time.
Hear you can't be a whisper. Oh, you're
What?
texting.
Yeah, everyone's texting everybody like, what's going on? Check in. Roll call.
That's okay. Just silent.
Holcombe, you there? I'm
You
here.
on silent right now or something?
Yeah, I am.
Why don't we have external cameras? Like, can y'all see that? 'Cause I swear there's nothing out there.
There's one in the front one, but that's about it.
There's a camera right here too.
I just feel like that's like a lot.
Yeah, but I've seen that one. Doesn't show anything. I'll tell you that right now. They when they called us down there, we got to see it. You know, doesn't.
Oh,
Yeah, I've
because
seen-
of the thing.
Yeah,
I've
you
seen the
can't see
cameras
that door
before.
either. You can't see it.
It's only
V
internal.
stands for vertical lines have an undefined slope. Slope is, this is hard to write, like straight up and down, but the slope is undefined and the equation of the line is always x equals the x-intercept every time. That's your Your water bottle was hid by on his head, and I thought you were clapping
I
for
heard a
me.
knock.
Like, thank you. I
No,
didn't-
I was trying to get my eyes
She was doing
out.
this.
I didn't look back.
Or no, because I did this.
And all I saw. Koi bucks, horizontal lines have zero slope, and you know you have a horizontal line in front of you if it's just y equals a number. Vertical lines have an undefined slope, and you know you have a vertical line in front of you if it's just x equals a number. Wait, that says vertical, V-E-R-T, vertical. So here are two examples, and it is as simple as it sounds. Notice this looks weird. This is your indication that something's up. There is only one variable. Usually we have a y and an x. We don't this time. So that's your clue. This is your little clue to say, oh, this is that acronym she taught me. Right? Hoi bucks. And then look at what letter you see. You see an X. So focus on bucks. And then think to yourself what it stands for. It stands for drawing a vertical line right through the x-axis at the number it says. So you go to the x-axis, you find -2, and you drop a vertical. And it's as simple as that. Now, if I asked you to tell me the slope, you would say that the slope is undefined. And that's because there is a 0 in the bottom of the slope fraction, which is why it's undefined. Now, coming to this example, there is only one letter. What letter is it? Which means you need to think, I should have written right here, bucks. You need to think hoi, which means you need to draw a horizontal line crossing the y-axis at this number. Now, when you look at that number at first, it should be confusing. Change it to a decimal. That is y equals 2.5, right? So I really didn't give myself any room on here. 2.5 would be right there.
Oh, your box is huge.
I know, I'm sorry. And what's the slope? Well, it's hoi. What is it? 0. Hoi bucks. We're not going to practice any more of them because that's it. Like it's the same process every time. Hoi bucks should be your favorite because of the acronym. It helps you set it up. Okay. All right. Go to the next example. You will notice it is a word problem. Guys, remember with word problems, I need you. I was terrible at them. Because they intimidated me. They still do sometimes. I always have to remind myself. First of all, I can do it. So that's part of the problem. You need to just be like, all right, I gotta answer this. I'm gonna answer it. Read the question multiple times. Read it once to get an idea of what you're dealing with. Then go back and read it again and draw out, like mark out anything that's not necessary. Underline keywords. Ask yourself, what am I finding here This even has a picture, which should make this way easier. Let's read it. This part right here is always the title of your word problem from the textbook. Doesn't matter. Construction laws regarding access ramps for disabled state that every vertical rise of 1 foot requires a horizontal run of at least 12 feet. Okay? So what's the grade? Grade is the construction word for slope. So they're asking, what is the slope for this particular type of problem? Okay, so let's make some notes. This is a basic slope question. Do not overthink this. What's the phrase for slope? Oh, I'm sorry. The phrase for, rise over run. What did it say to rise? It says it's got to go up 1 foot, and then it's going to run 12 feet. So the slope is 1/12 feet in feet. All right, go to the next one. More of those questions, right? Okay, average rate of change. You see the big box at the top. That is me letting you know that sometimes instead of hearing the word slope, you might hear the phrase average rate of change. It's the same thing. They're one and the same. It's like, solutions, zeros, roots, and x-intercepts all meant the same thing. Slope, average rate of change, they mean the same thing. Look at this word problem here. The percent of American adolescents ages 12 to 19 who are obese increased. So this is important to give you a visual, or there's the graph too. It increased from about 6.5% in 1985 to 18% in 2008. They give you a graph to illustrate that. Not that you really care, but there's the graph. So this is not necessary, right? Find the average rate of change. This means find what?
Police chase? Yeah, it was a police chase, and I guess the suspect ran. Is that what that means?
I don't know. Actually,
So
absconding.
he ran and he got out of his vehicle and all was a foot pursuit or something.
Absconding. You know what? Okay, never mind. I'm going to keep that comment
What
myself.
else would it?
That's what they're sounding like trying to do.
Yeah, leave hurriedly and secretly, typically to avoid detection or arrest.
Ours are all
Right.
now.
In the child park back there.
Probably the greenhouse. What?
Nothing.
No, you can't do that.
Pause the video. Yeah. Because I really haven't used that one. Serious.
It said have a good day.
No, it didn't.
No.
I'll tell you in a minute. Let me wrap this up. All right. We're talking about a percentage of young Americans from 12 to 19, and it tells us that the increase was from 6.5% in 85 to 18% in 2008. Read the directions. Find the slope from 85 to 2008 in the percent of adults who are of adolescents who are obese. You're just finding slope. You do have years in here instead of normal, just like plain numbers. Let's take some notes. if you don't recall, don't write real big, the slope formula, as you may or may not recall, is when you take the y coordinates and subtract it over the x coordinates and subtract it. I'm going to give you another trademark phrase that really helps. Stack them and subtract them. It really helps. If you already know how to do slope, then feel free to take off with it. Now let me show you what I mean by stack them and subtract them. We have these two coordinate points right here. Here's one and here's one. Do you notice how the graph is not a straight line? Do you see that? It's got like some, almost like a weird staircase. They want you to find the average rate of change, which means they want you to pretend as if it were a straight line and state the slope. So you just assume that there is a line that exists between the two endpoints. I'm going to stack them. We've got 2008. Now, when I do 18%, you can change it to decimal if you want, or you can leave it in percent form. Then we got 1985 and 6.5%. This is what I mean by stack them. Here's why it's helpful to stack them. Because now your y coordinates are stacked and your x coordinates are stacked. So when you go to plug this in, you don't accidentally swap positions of your x's and your y's. Here's how I subtract. When I go to find my slope, remember that the sub-coordinates here don't matter. What does matter is however you subtract your y's dictates how you subtract your x's. Do y'all remember that? That the order that you subtract matters. However you're going to subtract the y coordinates is going to dictate the order that you subtract the x coordinates. So when I stack them, I draw a visual, I draw an arrow to show myself that I'm going to subtract 18% minus 6.5% first, because that's the y's. Then I'm going to come over here and subtract 2008 minus 1985 second, because those are the x's. All right, so now I'm going to put it in slope. 18% minus 6.5% over 2008 minus 1985. Do we have to do this? No, I just did that so someone would know where the numbers came from. 18 minus 6.5 is 11.5, right? And 2008 minus 1985 is 23. Now here's where my math lab is going to expect you to translate what you just found. That's the slope. But if I read that slope out loud to someone, it makes no sense. Remember what you're talking about. You're talking about, and look at your axes. I don't think it's labeled. It is labeled. No, it's not. Oh, there's your label right there. You're talking about the obesity rate among these ages over the span of these years. And it went up or down. What did it say? It went up. So what was the average rate of change? Well, it went up 11.5% over the course of 23 years. We need to calibrate that. So go to your calculator, or your phone. Let's figure out what 11.5 divided by 23 is in a smaller fraction. 0.5. You'll divide those. Divide it. Enter this in your calculator. You'll divide that. You're going to get 0.5. Now you got to translate this. 0.5 is what fraction, y'all? That is 1/2 on top was what? This might be where to do what the percent signs. On top was a percent and the bottom represented years. So the translation is that the average rate of change was an increase of 1% every 2 years. Now that makes more sense. I can't wrap my mind around 11.5 every 23 years. Like that. That doesn't translate to me. But I can make my mind, I can understand 1% increase every 2 years. So the way you get it is just to divide the fraction to get a nicer decimal, and then put it back in fraction form to be able to read it. No, this was years. Remember, look back at what these were. These were years. Yeah, these were years. So 1% increase every 2 years. At this point, you should start 1-3 because tomorrow we will finish it and it will be due Monday at 1 o'clock.
So are we staying?
No, they're gonna. No, it rings in
We got
like
1
1
minute.
minute.
Is it gonna rain?
Yeah, they're gonna dismiss. No one's allowed. Oh, you know what? I probably need to go stand over there at that door.